Hey, I'm Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School with This Week in History. Sorry I'm about a day late. Had a date with an oral surgeon yesterday, so my mouth wasn't working too well. Anyway, we made it. Specifically, actually, it's the week of May the 10th through the 16th. So let's see what we have. Well, first of all, we'll start off with, on May the 14th of 1804, Mr. Meriwether Lewis and Mr. William Clark, along with 38 others, departed its camp near St. Louis, Missouri, on an epic journey that would take them all the way to the Pacific Ocean. The mission was to explore the newly acquired Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase area was a gigantic territory. All were part of 17 current states. The route that was taken was about 8,000 miles. They pretty well stuck together on the way out. On the way back, they did split up and go several hundred directions, explore some little side trip, about 8,000 miles total. Jefferson's instructions on what he intended for them to do were detailed and voluminous. We honestly had absolutely no idea what was out there besides mapping and establishing a firm claim. They were looking for a northwest passage, a water passage to the Pacific. Also, apparently, dinosaurs and woolly mammoths were other things that Mr. Jefferson was curious to see if they were out there. It was fantastically successful, really, in every aspect. Contact with the tribes was generally very, very positive, with the exception of a meeting on the way back with 8 Blackfeet warriors who tried to steal some horses and weapons. Friendly relations with dozens of tribes were established. Obviously, that wouldn't last. Only one man died on the entire journey. He died actually fairly early on, and it was of an appendicitis, which, if he would have been in Philadelphia, it might not have done him any good. So it's truly incredible they made it that far and back, and with such a little loss of life. The number of specimens that were collected, drawings that were made, these are from some of the journals. 120 animal and 200 plant specimens were collected. Thomas Jefferson, as a matter of fact, kept a prairie dog as a pet for some time that was sent back by Lewis and Clark. What is truly amazing, too, is considering the length of that journey, a lot of the navigation, the actual mapping part of it, was either done by sighting the stars using a sextant and a compass, etc., when possible, but a lot of it actually had to be done by a dead reckoning. Literally coming up to a bend in a river, looking at another bend in the river as far as you could see, and making your best guess about the distance, and making your best guess about the speed it took you to cover that, and there you go. Somebody recently, though, using GPS, followed as close as possible to the original track, which is fairly well known. Turns out they were off by a grand total of 19 miles out of 8,000. Well, not too bad. Well, next what do we have? I mentioned to you last week that in 1979, a lot of people started carrying umbrellas that had targets on top of them, various other things. It had to do with this. This is Skylab. On May the 14th of 1973, Skylab was launched by NASA. Skylab was and is the first and only wholly American space station. It remained in orbit for 6 years. There were 3 different 3-man crews that spent a total of 171 days in space. At one point, they set an endurance record of 84 days, which since then has been shattered. But a number of experiments were conducted. The solar telescope apparently was particularly successful. Budget cuts, delays in the space shuttle program pretty well doomed Skylab. It was allowed to burn up on reentry in the Earth's atmosphere in 1979. Now, Skylab's reentry became quite a topic of conversation. A lot of worry and, frankly, some silliness as well. Although it was a rather large station, NASA was convinced that the vast majority of it would burn up in the atmosphere. They calculated the odds of a piece actually striking a person as 1 in 152. But that didn't stop the entrepreneurial spirit. People produce, like I said, t-shirts with target, Skylab target. This was your Skylab protective helmet. People put targets on their houses, on the roofs of buildings. There was even an aerosol spray that was called Skylab repellent, money back guaranteed if you got hit by a piece of Skylab. One newspaper offered a reward of $10,000 for the first piece of Skylab to be delivered to its offices. Another one offered a $200,000 reward if one of their subscribers suffered personal injury or property damage due to Skylab. Now, Skylabs Reentry was going to be over the Indian Ocean. NASA was aiming for a spot about 800 miles to the southeast of Cape Town, South Africa. Again, they figured most of it would burn up in the atmosphere, even though it was rather large. However, it didn't burn up as fast as NASA thought it would, and due to a mathematical error, NASA essentially missed the entire Indian Ocean. Because, as it turned out, you had debris falling as far as 300 miles inland in Australia. One man actually found, I believe it was 24 pieces total on his property in the Shire. That would be a county, essentially, the Shire of Esperance. He was flown to the U.S. by a Philadelphia businessman to collect one of the newspaper prizes. The Shire of Esperance, by the way, is there some Skylab artifacts that are in a small museum in the Shire of Esperance. The Shire of Esperance did actually fine NASA 400 Australian dollars for littering. This was not paid by NASA. In 2009, though, it was paid by a morning radio show host who asked for donations from his listeners. So there you go, Skylab. Next, we have, if you are a baseball fan, May the 12th, 1925, Yogi Berra was born. Baseball fans will certainly know who Berra was. He played for, I think, all but one of his 19 seasons with the New York Yankees. He established himself as being one of the best players to ever play the position of catcher. During that time, he also appeared in 14 World Series, which is a record. 10 of them, his team won. What he is probably as known towards anything is Yogi-isms. And I'd like to share just a couple of those with you, if you will indulge me. It's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. If you don't know where you are going, you might end up someplace. Baseball is 90% mental. The other half is physical. And my personal favorite, always go to other people's funerals. Otherwise, they won't come to yours. So, Mr. Yogi Berra, philosopher. Well, that's it for this week. Just to give you an idea of what's coming up. Next week, we will explore whether or not this is what caused the death of John Wayne. Well, that's it. I'm Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School, and we look forward to seeing you right here next week.